All right, well, here we are. Welcome everybody. We're in our third virtual conversation about graduates and all sorts of stuff here at University School, reminiscing as we get towards the end of our 18th year. And we're here with Gisele Woodward, who's, oh my gosh, she's done everything. Driven cars on upper school trips, been everywhere, and the mom of two graduates, including one of our first, 10-year graduates. So she's the mom of Jack and Kristina. Kristina is a graduate of Belmont in Tennessee, and Jack's a senior, can't believe it, at George Washington University. And so she's going to talk a little bit about being a parent and navigating all that through university school, and then we'll have some time for some questions or whatever else the time takes us. And we're at 30 minutes max, and we got about 28 to go. So Gisele, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Jason. Always a pleasure to talk to USL parents or let them know our experience. And, I wish I would have known then what I know now, but don't regret it one bit. It was the best decision we made to be at USL. So just a little bit of background. Our daughter went into USL for high school. She ended up transferring midway 8th grade, but she was an average B student. She was just a shadow in the background in a group. But for her, the USL experience was completely different. She came out of her shell. She started to talk to people. She started to presentations. She was taking leadership roles. It was like a new child being at USL and be in a small groups and be able to be given, unknowns to her, a lot of leadership roles. So that was kind of our experience with Kristina and why she went into USL. Jack, for us, was a completely different story. He started in 3rd grade at USL, went through middle school, was thinking of switching because of sports, which is not the case nowadays. And literally the day that he was going to submit an application, he pulled it and say, I cannot let go of my LOTCs. And that was huge for him. He's always a kid that wants to learn, wants to understand, wants to see things. And that type of learning experience was critical for him. Fast forward 4 years later, he took a lot of advantage at College of Charleston. He ended up taking 10 classes at College of Charleston, which meant that when we were applying, we heard about the APs, how many APs do you take, things like that. And colleges couldn't really understand the intention of College of Charleston classes. So knowing now what we know, basically all our high schoolers graduate having all the credits taken at College of Charleston have been approved and have gone. So he went to George Washington University and he's still there, senior. And he basically was almost a sophomore by the time he went in, and everything got credited. Everything went to his core curriculum classes, and he could have finished a year early, but we made the decision that he didn't have to do that, and he could experience college the way he wanted to experience college. And it opened for him a slew of alternatives that otherwise he would not have had. He went 2 semesters abroad. He literally took USL's motto, "The world is my classroom," as literally. And he went a semester abroad to Singapore. He went a semester abroad to Madrid. He was able to take flamingo class in Madrid. He just took on the culture and was able to experience. And in Singapore, he went to 7 other countries, from Japan to Thailand to Indonesia. I mean, he just really went out there. Mom was very scared, but he did it and he experienced it. And he told me, it's like, Mom, history's, and he's majoring in history. It's like, history is so much better when I actually there. So we decided that he could do all the things instead of graduating early. He ended up has a major in history, but he ended up with 3 minors. Because they cannot commingle each other. So he has a minor in international affairs, and he has a minor in film studies, and he has a minor in Spanish. College of Charleston, he took everything from languages to anthropology. And I really didn't care as long as he explored different things. And now you may think, well, other things about USL. You might think USL is small. Well, it was even smaller back then. My daughter was a graduate of 1 back that year. I mean, we had only been open 3 years. It was tiny, but it was the best thing for her. And it was the best thing for Jack. And even though the school is small, and now it's actually kind of big compared to back then, it allowed them to have conversations with adults when they go in LO2Cs. It allowed them to experience a college and talk to professors and, manage all that while in high school, while he's still guided, while they're still moving along, while they still had me along the way, to be able to experience it at a high school level. So once they went to college, they were so ready to just go. From that perspective, how they got involved, how I would encourage parents that have that concern, it's not socially, it's about how do they get involved. So my daughter was an equestrian rider, so it didn't matter what school she would go to. So get involved in, and nowadays you can actually try out for sports, regardless if your school doesn't have the sport. So now you have an extra blessing, and that Jack could have done that, which back then he couldn't do it. He had to make that tough choice. Other things about, being small, Jack was involved in volunteering with a couple organizations. So just getting involved with things outside of our community or outside of the school into the community kind of expands their social network, to put it that way, and their peers. So just because the school is small doesn't mean that their peers are small. Jack was involved with the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation nationwide. He had that group that he would lean on. So it's looking for, I think, truly, I think our high school is our biggest secret in town, and it shouldn't be, because of all the opportunities we really put our kids through, not only College of Charleston, but our LOTCs. It really sets them apart from everyone else. When you apply for colleges, when you move on in your world. So that's kind of the brief statements. I don't know if Jason, you have any other questions, but it's, I guess, to summarize, it's really about looking at your kid in the big picture. How do you want them to be? Yes, they might not have that, big senior prom or whatever it is, but doesn't mean that they cannot get invited if they expand their social groups. So it's just a big picture for us Jack has been confident enough to explore the world, literally, and confident enough to do well in college. Both of them did great. Kristina is now because of USL, she is in the process of submitting her first novel and working on Barnes and Novels and living her dream, really, of moving forward and being, hopefully, someday a published author. So they would not never had done that if it wasn't for USL. So thank you. Any other thoughts, questions that I can
Yeah.
add to the conversation or expand on their experience and their background?
And, so in hindsight, you have two totally different experiences. You have a daughter who the environment she was in became unhealthy, right, in eighth grade. And I remember meeting with her and having her spend some time with some of our upper school girls who were trying to help her navigate that. And I think sometimes we miss that within a school, a culture can be unhealthy, right? And it's important to know that sometimes people will say, well, that's the real world and it will toughen you up. And others would say, what you said, which was all sorts of different experiences, and seeing them, some of them are uncomfortable, is a great way to experience dislocation in the real world in a way that's awesome and eye-opening, but also it can be tough and hard as things don't turn out to be that you want them. But I'm also intrigued by looking back, you have a son who was at the school for 10 years. How did that change just catch you off guard, as he did things that shocked you and surprised you, of like, oh, my son's off at a class, I've never seen him before. My son just went on this long trip. I remember used to having to pack for him. Now I don't have to do that anymore. Because something we stress besides academics also is life skills. And so I don't know if you and your husband, or when the kids are all together, if you reminisce about those things and what your insights have been. That's a lot. Go for it.
Yes, let me go back to Kristina. So Kristina, as I said, was an average solid kid, but she was average. She wasn't outstanding on her academics. But USL provided the environment that she was able to feel self-confident in herself. And that was the number one priority for me. It wasn't necessarily, she was a great AB student. Like, that was it. It was nothing, she wasn't a 4.0, but she just got through. But her self-confidence suffered a lot. And being at USL, being a small group, was able to allow her and provide her with a lot of leadership roles and being in charge and being forced to be in charge, to her self-confidence come out. I do remember clear as day, one experience that Kristina had is Jason gave Kristina some press release to submit to radio stations and whatnot. And she came home and was like, Mom, they actually called me back from a radio station, which then later she actually called them and asked for a job shot because why not? Like, she could her own totally, because she wanted to experience the being in a radio station. So I don't know if it's my internet, or your internet, but it's a little unstable. Hopefully it's not mine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we definitely had some techie thing going on.
Okay.
But I think we caught the gist of it.
Sorry, it was me.
I think so.
I'll keep going, I guess, to the second part if you can hear me. Hopefully you can.
Yeah.
Okay, so the second part on regarding Jack, he was a kid that had a lot of food allergies. It was very stressful for him to eat out, and LOTCs and the 5-day long. It was extremely difficult and challenging. So I went with him the first year to help him navigate that and let him learn. After that, he kind of wanted me to be there just in case. So I did end up going to a lot of LOTCs, but he was able to manage and navigate. He didn't need me anymore. It was a good safety net that mom was around if I had a question. But for him to be brave enough to go out with his friends and pick a restaurant as they divide in different groups and be able to manage his food allergies was a huge deal for Jack, and the experiences at USL. This is as a middle schooler, moving forward as a high schooler and as managing life. His experience at Singapore was probably the hardest. It's a language major difference. It's a different culture. It's just everything is different. But for him to then navigate getting his visas to go for the weekend to Indonesia or go to Malaysia or go to Thailand, it was a big deal. Like he wasn't calling home to ask me. He was figuring it out on his own. And I think that way of being on his own, I think if it wasn't for USL, that gave him, again, the confidence to, I can do this, I can try something new, I can manage. The only rule he had is he had to text me another phone number. So I'm like, and I don't know what I would have done with another phone number, but he did. He would tell me which friend he was going with him to another country. So he was able to value the rules, but also be able to be explorer. And I think that comes with courage of life skills that he gained through his high school, through basically his entire USL. Being on the fly type of thing, and making it happen when things don't exactly go as planned. So I think that's a huge part of why he's been so successful managing college and all the extra activities he's done.
It's a lot of bravery, and especially some of that was taking place, during the pandemic, for him to be able to do that. And so, knowing Jack as I did when he was a lot more reserved, when he's had more health struggles when he was younger, that was really neat, to hear and get updates from him as he was doing that. And, the thing that I look at Kristina and Jack and think about both of them with is they've got ties to the school now. Like we have a 10th grader who holds a candle for Jack, Declan, and, all the younger students who, you're very candid about your view of Kristina as a student. But within the culture, it pushed her to get out of her comfort zone and do a lot more and thrive in a lot of ways. But also, because you're not in a single age class, she really cared for and inspired younger people, which I imagine played a role in taking the edge off of the hard feelings she had about the unhealthy culture that she was in the school before, and uplifting and serving as a role model for younger students. And that's something that I talked to the students about, but I didn't know what you and Mark felt as parents, knowing that your children were being brave, doing well in school, picking up life skills, but also, being in a healthy, positive environment, and then paying that forward with younger students by mentoring them. I don't know if I've ever asked you about that, what y'all's take on that was.
I am trying to think, who was it? Kristina had a lot of younger mentors, and she still to this day connect with them. And I'm trying to think who this person was, that I just saw her at the last Y'all Fest. I was there to meet up with Kristina for the Y'all Fest, and sure enough, she came running from behind and gave me a hug. And it was like, oh my gosh, she went to Wanda for high school. But she was huge into books and huge into writing and novel club, and she was probably about 6 years younger than Kristina, and Kristina totally had taken her. She's still in high school, I think. But Kristina totally took her under her wing, and she used to even call her like my little sister. But those are the things that USL has because of the mixed group classes. It's so neat to have those little munchkins looking up. But most of Jack, what I remember Jack, his friends moving up. And when his friends graduated, I mean, he would bawl and cry, that it was like wrenching that he could have that strong relationship as a young one with, this is even before we had a high school, with the 8th graders moving on. And it was like, I mean, he felt it for weeks every time those 8th graders. So I think it is a valuable lesson. I mean, Bennett was Jack's super friend. Obviously, he's at Georgetown right now in college, but they were 3 years apart, and those two were so close together. And Bennett looked up to Jack. It's one of the ones that I remember. They went even camping. His mom called me. I'm like, is he okay? I'm like, oh my God, I'm vouching for my son and Pi. It was Pi and Jack and Bennett that went camping. I was like, oh my God, yes. Pi is like a total Boy Scout. They'll be fine. But is that kind of relationship that gets created at USL. It's part of the culture of having the young and the older students being role models for them, and those tight relationships that you don't see in the traditional schools at all.
So you talked about bravery and confidence and having all these experiences, and I'm not going to forget that quote about Jack has to have his LOTCs, which means learning outside the classroom, which is super neat. And then you're talking about mentoring, which is kind of like service to other people, where you give and teach other people, and they reciprocate back the attention that you've given them. But also from your side as a parent, it can be seen paradoxical, but when people come to our school or interact with them when we go on trips, uniformly they'll talk about their civility and manners, and they have a lot of practice in that. But meeting and building relationships, because I know that a story that Jack's really proud of is that he developed a lifelong mentor through a relationship with a professor at the College of Charleston that started when he was only 16 or something years old as a junior. But talking about that piece also about, we all parents worry about when our children go off, do they have the ability to connect with other people? So talking about forging relationships, both friends and I've sort of given the cat's out of the bag, connecting with this professor who they still have a relationship today of the mentor-mentee relationship, which is super rare to have already acquired that in high school. So I don't know if you want to talk about that for both Kristina and Jack, about again, paradoxically, you think small school not going to be able to figure out how to connect with other people. I don't know if you and Mark have thoughts on that.
Yes, absolutely. So in Jack's, as you alluded, Jack still connects with that professor. Actually, that professor, it was a history professor who kind of put the nail in the coffin, basically, about telling Jack, you really have a knack for it. You should consider being a professor. And that's what Jack wants to be. Like, that meant so much to Jack because he had told us, and we were like, what? You want to be a professor? Like, I'm like, are you sure? We were not really sure of him doing that, and what does that mean? And when this professor just really encouraged him and saw him through it, it was like, life is amazing. And still to this day, he talks to him and gets advice from him as he's moving to his master's degree and moving forward to someday, I'm sure, doing his PhD. For Kristina, it was different. I think the biggest part that we saw Kristina's change, it was, as I mentioned before, is her self-confidence, is being able to be in charge. So when she went to Belmont, she actually started a novel club with her friends, and she had this amazing relationship with one of her professors, that she ended up taking every single class that professor offered because she loved her so much. And they talk the same language, and they talk writing, and they ended up asking her to be the advisor of the novel club, because you need a professor to be part of a club. And I moved on, but and it lives on post her graduation, which is amazing. But it was, she would have never done that any other place. So it's those relationships that move on. She was able to know how things work, and know, because she helped Miss Beck a lot with the novel club and running it. So it's those little pieces that you see it, and then they say, oh, I can do this beyond USL. I can stand up and be a leader too, because I've done it before. So, and I think the maybe I mentioned it before and I'm repeating, but the LOTCs, being exposed to different people and different kind of experiences, whether it's a speaker that wrote a book, to Charleston Tea Plantation, one of Jack's favorites, is completely different things. And be able to talk, I remember Jack would talk to my mother about this Charleston Tea Plantation, how is there a machine that takes the leaves out, and like he could go on and on talking to an adult about that process, because he got fascinated by him. So that helps any student in the future be able to learn to connect to people in different ways, because now your exposure is wide to many things. So what's the first thing we when we start meeting people is trying to establish a relationship, something we have in common to somebody else. And when you have a very wide range of experience, you can kind of talk to more people and, learn relationships, or create, or I guess, create relationships or friendships, because now we have something in common. And I think that's part of the blessings of the LLTCs. They can talk to a military because they've been to a bunch of bases, and they can relate. Oh yeah, I went to that museum, that was so interesting. They can talk about it, versus any other high school. Your experiences are really your textbooks or your classroom. You might have a wide range of friends, but not necessarily those friends move on with you, or maybe those friends don't necessarily are exposed to a wide range of people and things. So I think that's roundabout way of answering your question.
No, and that's, this is something that, as these sessions continue into the future, something that's neat to talk about, because a lot of times people will look at LOTCs as satiating curiosity and being exposed to new things. But there's, we were brainstorming yesterday to help get everyone on the same page, and the students quickly came up with 15 things, and then we ran out of time. And that hits some of them. It does make them interesting and enables them to connect with other people, like you were saying. And with technology and other stuff, which are a blessing, they also create moments where you might stick to people who are like you. And so being able to find common ground with a lot of people, I think that's the way forward for our students, is that they can find their way, whether they're leaving the country or going to another state or doing anything like that. They have the confidence they can connect, and they've had a lot of experiences. And then also there's a piece about creativity, having a different experience, makes people go, I'm glad Jack's here, Kristina's here. They always have insights and always have something to say, and they've learned a lot of different stuff. And so that's a nice thing. So I guess that sort of becomes self-reinforcing, but I look forward to exploring that more, because that was a great story. And so I'll be bringing that back to school as well. But we hit our 30 minutes just like that.
Good.
I know, we really did. And so appreciate you joining and talking from the parent side of two students who've graduated from university school, and what it meant to you. And I hope, I think clearly it pulled you out of some stuff that you hadn't revisited in a little bit, and so that was really nice. So,
absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
you.
you.
We did it, and we'll see you
Yes.
soon.
We'll see you soon.
All right, bye.